In this video, we're gonna go into how to not get fat over Christmas and still have a jolly old time. Boom! Yes, team, what is happening? Sharif Lawton in the building. Hopefully you are well and welcome back into another episode of the Fit After 30 show on your Apple Podcast, your Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. This video is going to be very apt for this time of the year. I don't know if you've put your Christmas tree up yet, but we are doing that this week, which means mulled wine, brandy, mince pies, all that stuff is about a week away from starting and really kicking off with the festivities that this time of the year typically brings. But as we know, we can also end up getting a little bit overweight, a little bit over fat, and going into the new year really not feeling our best if we don't go into this month with a concrete action plan. And that is exactly what I'm going to give you today in this here episode. Now, if you're new to me and my channel, my name is Sharif Lawton, guiding men and women in their 30s and their 40s to an absolutely incredible physique transformation without giving up their socials, their family life, or indeed work life, to make sure that the plan actually complements what they're doing rather than now complicates things. We dissolve the notion that your best days are behind you, and we make sure that you look, feel, act, and operate at your very best, even in this new chapter of your life. If that sounds like the sort of content in which you think you might be enjoying moving forwards, go ahead and hit that little bell notification, hit that subscribe button, all that good stuff to make sure you are not now missing episodes moving forward. So super simple. In today's episode, I have 5 key core principles which I'm going to be giving you, which we help our 23 Lean coaching clients out with as they have an action plan for December to make sure that they can still enjoy all the food, all the booze, all the fun times with friends and family, but they don't have an unnecessary extra stone of fat to contend with come January 2024. And I'm going to make sure that you are locked and loaded with your plan by the end of this video. And honestly, the 5th tip is my absolute favorite and is one where most people just don't really recognize the importance of. Okay, so getting into the first one, don't press it in December. Just make sure that you understand that December and the very times in which you are going to be more social and are going to be enjoying yourself with meals out, with parties, with food, with booze, whatever it may be, are probably still few and far between. And actually, not something like that is happening every single day in December, although most people act like it does. See, most people, as soon as it gets to December the 1st, they've just basically pressed the F it button, I'm going to deal with it in January. And whilst that is fine, you do have to realize that you can do some real damage when it comes to the amazing progress in which you have potentially made up until now. Or maybe you haven't, but pressing the F it button in December the 1st is really going to exacerbate the lack of progress in which you have made and just cause you to fight this uphill battle in January, which you really don't need to do. So instead, what I recommend is literally mapping out the entirety of December, looking at the very dates in which you've got your Christmas meals, your drinks out, your parties, your work things, and all the rest of it, and just marking that off on the calendar with a little X or a tick or what have you. And that's going to signal to you that that day is going to be quite hard to stay on track because there's going to be more calories and potentially you're not going to have time to get your steps in, get to the gym or do your cardio. And that's absolutely fine. But then I also want you to look at all the days where nothing really is happening. And I want you to make sure that you set some non-negotiables. See, one of the things in which we do very differently inside 23 Lean compared to other coaching companies and just a style of level of thinking which most people have when it comes to their fitness journey and their goals is the fact that we dissolve quite quickly the all or nothing sort of mentality. I'm either doing it or I'm not doing it. I'm on the wagon, I'm off the wagon. That sort of mentality is going to leave you signing up for being in and out of shape your entire life. The reality is, especially in December, you need to get concrete clear about what your minimums are in terms of the minimum effective dose, which is still going to move you forward, or at the very least, protect you from poor quality outcomes like getting unfit and putting on a bunch of weight in December. So for instance, let's say best case scenario for me could look like 4 gym sessions, 10,000 steps per day, tracking all my food, and making sure I get 8 hours of sleep. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. And if I'm consistently doing that, I know that I'm going to be marching forward towards my goals at the very fastest rate possible. However, in December, with all the other bits and pieces going on, that might not just be viable. And actually, just lowering that bar a little bit might look like, okay, do you know what? 6K steps per day is better than nothing. Let's make sure that I get to the gym at least twice across a 7-day period. And let's make sure that if I am boozing, I'm not doing so every single day. And I'm actually just making sure that I'm doing so with parties and what have you, rather than just every single day because it's December. So those sorts of things, you want to set those minimums for to make sure that you're protected, as I say, from low quality experiences, which most people have in December. And just like a little bit of planning goes so far, and it's going to go a long way for you if you just really think about the fact that December doesn't need to be a write-off month, and it's just a few days in which you're going to be having a little bit more indulgence than normal, which in the grand scheme of consistency and things as a total, as a whole, and if you kind of zoom out a little bit, it's going to allow you to realize that it's going to be a small drop in the ocean, and you'll know more than a few days from pulling right back after that in January, as long as you approach it with some level of discipline, care, and just a little bit of planning. Now, the second point is we're going to be talking about booze specifically, all right? Now, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of should you drink booze, should you not, and what have you, and get all Andrew Huberman of you. But what I am going to suggest is the fact that if you are going to be drinking alcohol or more booze than normal during December, you kind of need to know a couple of things about how the body actually treats it, and therefore your decision making around that. You see, your body treats alcohol as a toxin, as a poison, and priority number one, to rid it off the liver. Now, when you do drink and you eat a large meal as well, that large meal is basically sitting there as digestive processes are being put on the back burner because, as I say, priority number one is dealing with the alcohol. Now, where is that a problem is because a lot of that food, that undigested food and those metabolic processes being temporarily put on hold because your body's dealing with the alcohol, that can essentially lead to unwanted fat gain, especially if you're having a bunch of dietary fat with that meal. So, cliff notes, a bunch of booze and a bunch of dietary fat is literally a recipe for disaster when it comes to you adding body fat. So just be very careful about that. And if at all possible, try and not to have a really heavy meal with a lot of drinking at the same time, because like I say, you are more likely to store that as body fat way more readily than if you weren't. So for me personally, if I'm going out on a bit of a sesh and I know it's going to be a boozy one, I will really try and limit how much food I have that day. And if I know that it's going to be a big eating occasion, then I'll really try and limit the booze. I will try not to do the two things at once because, like I say, it is a recipe for fat gain based on how the body actually deals with booze. Now, of course, if you are going to be drinking and you want to kind of limit the caloric load, we want to be thinking things like champagnes and Prosecco's and spirits with like a low calorie mixer, that sort of thing. And typically staying away from the really sugary cocktails, the heavy beers, the Guinnesses, and the stuff which is going to rack up calories very, very fast. And that's the thing. Unfortunately, there is no free lunch. The calories in alcohol are still going to contribute to your overall daily totals. And it's very easy to whack back a good handful of drinks without even knowing that you've put back a couple hundred or more calories. So definitely just watch out for that. All right, so tip number 3 is make sure you're still training hard during this festive period, all right? Make sure that you are really putting those calories to good use. And let me make one thing clear. This is now not about you out exercising the food in which you're going to eat, because that's going to pretty much be impossible to do. And it's not about you burning loads of calories or creating a room for more food. It's about telling the kind of nutrients in which you're going to be eating where to go. It's about making sure that your nutrient partitioning is favorable towards muscle tissue rather than fat mass. And guys, if you've been training throughout the whole year in a calorie deficit and you've been basically training on fumes and then you get some good food in the system, it's like you've taken something. It's going to feel absolutely incredible. Muscle pumps are going to be through the roof. Your recovery is going to be night and day different. Your motivation to train is probably going to be really, really high. And the weights in which you typically use are going to be so much more because now you're actually well fueled for that process. So like I say, that the worst thing you can do is to stop all training. Make sure you're active, make sure you're moving. And let's be real, it helps the mental side of things just as much as the physical, especially if you're going to be in a lot of positions whereby you're eating a lot, you're sitting on a couch and you're doing nothing, because that gets boring pretty quickly and it makes you feel absolutely shit. So listen, get out on your walks, get your 10K steps in, still hit up a couple of training sessions. If you want just like a home workout to do, whereby, you know, you don't have to get to the gym, what have you, just message me the words home workout and I'll literally send you something for free just so you can keep things ticking over before you get back into proper routine come January 2024. All right, this next tip is something which our private coaching clients oftentimes laugh about, and that is the fact that I say, hey, don't eat Quavers at Christmas. And for those of you that don't know what Quavers is, it's a crisp which has been out for quite some time. I'm probably showing my age a little bit. I don't even know if they make them anymore, but it's like some cheesy little crisp. And the reason why I say that is, again, because going back to that first point, typically once it gets to the 1st of December, people just go, and they forget all their good practices when it comes to high protein, nutrient dense foods, high volume, low calorie foods, and they're just eating random stuff because it's Christmas. The reality is I would much rather indulge and enjoy the festive things which I can't get year round. I'm talking about mince pies, Christmas cake, Yule log, mulled wine, that sort of stuff, right? Because I can't get that year round. And for me, that is very much synonymous with the festive season, with Christmas. I'm going to eat it, I'm going to enjoy it, I'm going to be done with it. The worst thing that you can do is, again, not have any minimums in place when it comes to nutrition. So just completely forget about wholesome food, good food choices, high protein diets, all that stuff, and just randomly eat rubbish because it's Christmas. That is where most people get into trouble. So really enjoy and savor the moment with friends, with family, because, I'm not some robot bodybuilder coach who will just say like food is fuel, because it's not. It's there as a means to connect. It's there as a means to, enjoy. It's there as a means to really make sure that you're getting that family and friend time as well. And we do that via celebrating with food. So it is not just fuel, but I do want to make sure that you are savoring what you're eating, you're enjoying it, and it's quote unquote worth it, rather than just, like I say, eating quavers at Christmas, eating random rubbish just because it's December. So try and avoid that. And again, going back to that first point, if there's nothing really going on and it's a quote unquote boring day, nail it, okay? Like, don't treat it any differently, because then when you do have a social occasion, number one, you can really enjoy it. But number two, you're not going to have this overall caloric mass and fat gain to deal with, because actually you've balanced it out with the other days in between. And then lastly, and this is one of our 10 commandments inside 23 Lean, right? And that is just to have a high degree of bounce back ability. Because let's say, for instance, you ignored all of these points and you basically did what you want over December and you put on the typical 5, 10, 15 plus pounds of body fat or what have you. Well, essentially, as long as you've got a high degree of bounce back ability, gaining body fat is only a short-term problem. Gaining body fat is only a problem if you don't know how to fix it, if you don't know how to take it off. And the reality is, if it's taken you more than 2 weeks to get right back to baseline where you were pre-Christmas in January, then you probably had a good time at Christmas. But in all seriousness, it's probably given you a steeper mountain to climb than you actually needed, because you can actually take fat off quite quickly if you're diligent about it. And that's, again, not me giving you a green flag and saying do what you want in December, but that is saying what I normally see is it's not the Christmas day, it's not the Boxing Day, it's not the New Year celebrations or what have you. It's the fact that people are very slow to pick up. They don't kind of put the food away come the first week of January and then bang, they're right back on track. They let it creep into the second week and the third week and the fourth week. And then February, I'm going to start thinking about my goals. And then I'm going to book the summer holiday. So it's not until mid-Feb, which I've actually started to sort my shit out. That's 6 weeks worth of lost progress. So, obviously enjoy your time and what have you, but when it's time to call it a day and to get right back on track, do so quickly. And that's the beauty about the human condition, right? You can essentially start a diet halfway through a bag of crisps, just not quavers, and you can make sure that you can flip that switch and just get right back on track with your deficit, with your training, with your cardio, with your mindset, and what have you, anytime that you want. But it's about having that high degree of bounce back ability when all the fun is done and dusted and the dust indeed has settled. Team, hopefully you found this video helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one in a bit.